Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into the world of operations and discussing how businesses can plan their capacity levels effectively. Now, before we get into the nitty gritty details, let's break down the key methods that help operations assess the consequences of their capacity plans. The first method we'll explore is the cumulative representations of demand and capacity. Imagine you're planning a party. You need to know how many guests you expect and whether your venue can accommodate them. These methods helps operations visualize how demand aligns with their capacity over time. Let's say you own a bakery. During the holiday season, you anticipate a surge in orders for your famous pies. By using cumulative representations, you can see if your bakery's capacity matches the increasing demand. This allows you to adjust staffing, resources, and production schedules accordingly. The second method we'll explore is queuing theory. Now, don't let the name intimidate you. Queuing theory is like understanding the dynamics of waiting in line. It helps operations analyze how queues form and how they impact capacity planning. Imagine you are at a theme park. You want to ride the most popular roller coaster, but there's a long line. Queuing theory helps operations predict wait times, optimize resource allocation, and improve customer satisfaction. So, how can operations plan their capacity levels? By utilizing these methods, businesses can make informed decisions that align with their unique circumstances, whether it's managing holiday rushes at a bakery or minimizing wait times at a theme park. Understanding capacity planning is essential for optimizing operations. As you can see in figure 11.10 in the book, we have a chart showing the expected demand for a chocolate factory. So they are making sweets. People tend to buy more chocolate around Christmas, so the factory needs to plan ahead. It aims to have the highest production in September, giving enough time for the products to reach the stores. One way to check if the factory can meet this demand is by looking at the graph. We can see areas where factory's capacity is higher than the demand areas, let's say the areas A and C, and where it is lower, which is the area B. If the total extra capacity, sum of areas A and C, is more than the total shortfall, which is on area B, then we can say the factory is probably equipped to handle the demand. But there is a couple of issues with this approach. The first issue is that not all months in figure 11.10 might have the same amount of working time. Some months, like August, might have holidays which reduce the factory's capacity. The second problem is that even if a capacity level seems enough, it might only be able to produce goods after the demand has passed. For instance, if there's a shortage of capacity at the start of the year, there won't be any stock to meet the demand. A better way to assess capacity plans is to plot the demand cumulatively. As shown in the blue line in figure 11.11, this one, okay, when we look at the cumulative demand graph in figure 11.11, we can see some important things. First, although the total demand peaks in September, because some months have fewer working days, the peak demand per day actually happens in August. Second, ups and downs in demand throughout the year are even more significant when we consider demand per day. For example, while the peak to lowest monthly demand ratio is 6.5 is to 1, the ratio per productive day is only 10 is to 1. This matters more to operations manager because It relates to the time aspect of the capacity. Plotting capacity alongside demand on the same graph helps us to understand and evaluate whether a capacity plan will work. So, looking back in the figure 11.11, we see a level capacity plan producing 14.03 tons per productive day, which meets demand by the end of the year. But if the goal is to match supply with demand as it happens, this plan falls short. Until around day 168, the cumulative production exceeds demand, indicating surplus or inventory. By day 80, for instance, 1,122 tons have been produced but only 575 tons are demanded, leaving 547 tons in surplus or inventory. Conversely, when demand exceeds production, it signals a shortage. By day 198, 3,025 tons have been demanded but only 2,778 tons are produced, resulting in a shortage of 247 tons. For a capacity plan to keep up with the demand, the cumulative production line must always be above the demand line. This makes it easier to judge a plan's adequacy. We can also gauge inventory implications by looking at the area between the cumulative production and the demand curves, representing inventory carried over time, hence, implication of carrying cost. Figure 11.12 illustrates a suitable level capacity plan for the chocolate maker, along with the cost of inventory. Assuming a storage cost of 2 euros per ton per day, we calculate monthly inventory and associated cost based on average inventory levels and the number of days in each month. Comparing plans on a cumulative basis. When comparing different plans, we can also look at them on a cumulative basis. This means we track how production or capacity changes over time. In a pure demand chase plan, the production line matches the demand line perfectly. This means no gap between them and therefore no inventory. But while this saves on inventory cost, it comes with its own expenses. Changing capacity levels cost money, and the cost usually goes up the more significant the change. For example, if you plan on increasing capacity by only 5%, it might just mean asking your current staff to work a bit more. But if you need to increase capacity by 15%, you might have to hire temporary staff, which cost more money and takes longer to fill in. Going above 15% might mean outsourcing some work, which is even more expensive. The cost of the change also depends on where you're starting from and where you are going. So it's usually cheaper to change capacity towards what is considered normal than what is not considered to be. Okay? So let's have a work example. Let's take a closer look at how chocolate manufacturer plans to adjust its production strategy. Currently, they have been following a steady production plan which is shown in figure 11.13. But they're not happy with the inventory cost. So, they are now considering new plans that involve adjusting production to match the demand more closely. Hence, the goal is to eliminate inventory cost since they will try to chase the demand. So, here are the plans. Plan 1. First, they'll set up the factory to produce at a normal capacity of 8.7 tons per day. For the first 124 days of the year, they'll produce at this level. Then, they'll ramp up the production to 29 tons per day using overtime, temporary staff, and subcontracting. They'll maintain this higher production rate until day 194, then scale back to 8.7 tons per day for the rest of the year. That's plan 1, okay? Now let's go to plan 2. Similarly, they'll start with a normal capacity of 12.4 tons per day. For the first 150 days, they'll produce at this level. Then, they'll increase production to 29 tons per day using overtime and some temporary staff. After day 190, they'll reduce production back to 12.4 tons per day for the remainder of the year. Now, the company has calculated the cost associated with these changes. For Plan 1, switching from 8.7 tons to 29 tons per day cost 110,000 euros, while reverting back or scaling down cost 60,000 euros. For Plan 2, the costs are lower, 35,000 euros to switch from 12.4 to 29 tons per day, while 15,000 euros to switch back. Okay? So figure 11.13 shows both plans on a cumulative basis. Plan 1 involves bigger capacity changes resulting in higher cost, but it keeps inventory cost low since production closely matches the demand. Plan 2 sacrifices some of the inventory cost advantage but saves more on capacity change cost. Hence, when we are going to choose which would be the better plan, you have to look on which plan has the lower total cost over the other. Alright? The next section of our discussion will focus on queuing theory. But first, we have to answer this question. How does capacity planning relates to waiting? Capacity planning involves ensuring that a business can meet the demand for its products or services efficiently. When we look at the capacity planning in terms of cumulative representations, it's helpful for operations that can store their finished products as inventory. However, for operations where products or services can't be produced before demand arises, a cumulative representation is not as informative. In such cases, the cumulative production can never exceed the cumulative demand line. At most, it can indicate when the operation fails to meet its demand. The vertical gap between the cumulative demand and production lines reveals the unsatisfied demand. Some of this demand might be fulfilled elsewhere, but some customers are willing to wait. This is why, for operations that can store their output, like many service based businesses, it's better to consider capacity planning and control using waiting or queuing theory. Queuing or waiting line management. When we talk about using cumulative representations for capacity planning, we assume that a production plan should aim to meet demand all the time. But when we think about it as a waiting line problem, we accept that sometimes customers might have to wait. This happens when it's hard to predict when customers will show up or how long it'll take them to serve or both. And that what makes it tough to have enough capacity all the time. Figure 11.14 shows how this works. Okay? Customers arrive randomly and wait in line to be served. Then, they are served by one of the servers. And when they're done, they leave. There are lots of systems like this. Table 11.2 gives some examples. All these systems have common elements that describe how they work. Let's go through each one of them. Number one, the source of customers. In queuing management, the source of customers refer to where the customers came from. And in queuing, customers aren't always people. They could be trucks at a weighbridge, orders waiting to be processed, or machines waiting for maintenance. The source of customers can be either finite or infinite. A finite source means there's a set number of potential customers. For example, if one maintenance person serves as 4 assembly lines, there are only 4 possible customers for them. And if one assembly line breaks down, the chance of another breaking down decreases because there are fewer lines left. On the other hand, an infinite source means there's a larger number of customers. So, even if some are being served, there's always a chance for more to arrive. Most queuing systems dealing with outside markets have infinite or nearly infinite customer sources. Next is the arrival rate. The arrival rate is how fast customers show up to be served, but customers usually arrive at a steady pace. Their arrival rate tends to vary. That's why they describe arrival rates using probability distributions. In queuing systems, it's normal that there are times when no customers show up and other times when many arrive all at once. Next, the queue. The queue is where customers wait to be served. If there's no strict limit on how many customers can wait at once, we can assume that queue can be endless. But sometimes there's a cap on how many customers can wait at a time. Example, in SSS, PhilHealth, and etc. Rejecting. If the queue already has maximum number of customers allowed, the system might reject new customers. For instance, during busy times, some websites won't let users access certain parts until things calm down. Example, the PRC website. Another item is bulking. When customers have the choice, they might decide not to join a long queue. In queuing terms, this is called bulking. Another term is reneging, leaving the queue. Sometimes, customers who have been waiting in line for a while might decide to leave, especially if they're not happy with how slowly things are moving. This means they miss out on being served. Queue discipline, order of service. Queue discipline refers to the rules that decide who gets served first in a line. Simple queues like those at a shop usually use first come first served rule. Another examples are priority queuing, like on the case of PWD, pregnant women, or senior citizen. Fair share scheduling, like in the traffic management, or the shortest processing time. Customers with the shortest processing time are served first. Next element, servers. A server is the place where customers get served. In different queue systems, there can be many servers set up in different ways. Some queues have servers lined up one after the other. For instance, at a self-service restaurant, you might first pick up your tray, then move to the food counter, then drinks counter, and finally the payment counter. Each of these is a server, but queues can get complex with a mix of different setups. Time to serve. Even if customers have similar needs, the time it takes to serve them can vary. Human servers might take different amounts of time to do the same task. That's why we describe how long it takes to serve each customer using probability distributions, just like we do for arrival times. Finding the right balance between capacity and demand. Managing capacity of a queuing system is tricky. You need to figure out how many servers to have ready at any given time to prevent long waits or underuse. Because arrivals or processing times are unpredictable, it's rare for the number of customers arriving to match the system's ability to handle them. Sometimes, a bunch of customers arrive all at once and need more time than usual to be served, causing queues to form. Other times, customers come less frequently and need less times to be served, leaving some servers idle. Even if the average capacity matches the average demand, you'll still see queues and idle time. If there aren't enough servers, meaning capacity is too low, queues will get too long, and customers will get frustrated with the wait, even if servers are getting used a lot. But if there are too many servers, meaning capacity is too high, customers won't wait too long. However, servers during that time will not be used too much. That's why managing capacity is about finding a balance between customer wait time and server use. It's crucial to be able to predict both factors for a queuing system. The next section of this chapter covers some simple math methods to understand how queues work. Variations in demand or supply. When demand or capacity fluctuates, it makes it harder for a business to keep up with its work. This means its effective capacity goes down. We talked about this before when we discussed how variability affects individual processes. Just to refresh our memory, the more unpredictable the arrival or activity times, the longer it takes to get things done and less efficient the process becomes. This applies to entire operations too. When things take longer, queues form and inventory piles up, as shown in figure 11.15. So, if there's a lot of variability, the business needs more capacity to make up for the inefficiencies. That's why businesses with lots of variability usually keep their capacity levels higher to handle it. Customers' perception about queuing. Nobody enjoys waiting in the line, but it's something we all have to deal with. So, if you ever felt frustrated while waiting, you are not alone. Research shows that queuing is one of the top activities that make people unhappy, second only to being sick in bed. However, how customers judge their experience in a queue depends on how they perceive the time they spend time waiting. For instance, if you're told to wait for 20 minutes but end up being served in just 10, you'll feel better about the experience than if you're told to take 10 minutes but actually waited for 20 minutes. Because of this, managing queuing systems involves trying to influence customers' perception and expectations. One queuing expert has identified several principles that affect how customers view waiting times. 1. Waiting without anything to do feels longer than being occupied. 2. Waiting before a service starts feels more boring than waiting during the service. 3. Feeling anxious or uncertain makes waiting feel longer. 4. Waiting with unknown duration feels more tedious than waiting with unknown duration. 5. Unexplained waits are more irritating than explained ones. 6. Customers are willing to tolerate longer waits for services they value highly. 7. Waiting alone is more boring than waiting in group unless you don't like people in the group. Next, service cost and waiting cost. Service cost and waiting cost are important concepts in operations management, particularly in the context of service operations and queuing theory. Let's delve into each of these concepts comprehensively. Number 1, service cost. Service cost refers to the expenses associated with providing a service to customers. These costs can include labor, materials, equipment, utilities, and overhead expenses. Labor costs are often significant portion of service cost, encompassing wages, salaries, benefits, and training expenses. That is for employees involved in the delivering the service. Materials and equipment cost may vary depending on the nature of service. For example, a healthcare service may require costly medical equipment, while a consulting service may only require specialized software. Utilities such as electricity, water, and internet services contribute to the operational expenses of service delivery. Overhead expenses include rent, insurance, administrative costs, and other indirect costs associated with running the service operation. Service cost management involves optimizing resources to deliver quality service at a competitive price while maintaining profitability. The other type of cost is the waiting cost. Waiting cost, also known as queuing cost, refers to the expenses incurred by customers while waiting for the service. It includes the value of customers' time, their dissatisfaction due to waiting, and potential loss of business. The value of customers' time is a critical component of waiting cost. It represents the monetary value that customers place on their time spent waiting in queues. This value can vary depending on factors such as income level, opportunity cost, and urgency of the service. Customer dissatisfaction due to waiting can lead to negative perceptions of the service provider, resulting in this decreased customer loyalty and potential loss of future business. Businesses must consider waiting cost when designing their service processes to minimize wait times and improve customer satisfaction. Queuing theory provides mathematical models and analytical tools to analyze and optimize waiting times in service systems. Strategies such as capacity planning, queue management, and service level agreements can help mitigate waiting cost. The relationship between service cost and waiting cost. There is often a trade-off between service cost and waiting cost. Investing in additional resources to reduce wait time, such as hiring more staff or implementing advanced technology, can increase service cost but decrease waiting cost. Conversely, reducing service cost by cutting corners or understaffing may lead to longer wait times, resulting in higher waiting costs due to customer dissatisfaction and potential loss of business. Balancing service cost and waiting cost is crucial for achieving optimal operational performance and customer satisfaction. Businesses must strike a balance that meets customer expectation while maintaining cost effectiveness. So in summary, service cost and waiting cost are interrelated factors that influence the efficiency, profitability, and customer experience of service operations. Effective management of this cost requires a holistic approach that considers both operational efficiency and customer satisfaction. The dynamics of capacity management. We've mainly talked about planning capacity so far, but in reality, managing capacity is much more dynamic. It involves reacting to actual demand and capacity as they happen. Think of it like a series of responses to changing conditions. At the start of each period, operations managers look at the demand forecast, current capacity, and any leftover inventory from before. With this info, they make plans for the next period's capacity. But during that period, things might not go as expected. Demand could be different, and actual capacity might not match the plan. Regardless, the same decisions need to be made for the next period based on the new situation. The success of capacity management is usually judged by factors like cost, revenue, working capital, and customer satisfaction. But it's all about looking ahead. The, the main factor influencing capacity decisions is the difference between long-term and short-term demand. If the long-term demand outlook is good, even if the short-term demand is low, businesses won't cut capacity drastically. And if the long-term outlook is poor, even high short-term demand won't make businesses invest in a lot of extra capacity. Figure 11.16 shows different strategies for managing capacity based on these outlooks. So as you can see, here is the table. I think that would be all for my discussion. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.